Mortal Kombat's long-running storyline has definitely had its ups and downs. From the simplicity of conveying crucial plotlines using text-based screens through the more immersive games of the 3D era, you could say it's been a mixed bag. However, in 2011, everything changed as the franchise would enter what many refer to as the NRS Era. The acronym NRS, of course, representing NetherRealm Studios. This partly beloved and partly controversial period began with a reboot of the ages through the most recent game, Mortal Kombat 1. And I know what you're thinking. How could a reboot be called Mortal Kombat and the most recent game be called Mortal Kombat 1? Quite frankly, I don't have an answer to that. But what I do have is a complete recap, analysis, and ranking of every NRS era game, including Mortal Kombat 9, Mortal Kombat X, Mortal Kombat 11, and Mortal Kombat 1, with both DLC expansions. After assessing these sometimes great and other times controversial stories, I will assign them a grade between S, which is the best, and D, which is the worst, on this tier list. When all is said and done, I will reveal what I believe is the greatest Mortal Kombat story of all time, otherwise known as the Gamespot, or maybe Gamespot?
What are you smoking, Chief?
Whatever, you know what I mean.
You spout nonsense.
Now that the table is set, everyone is present and accounted for, and we have the awe-inspiring Combat Temple as a backdrop, let's dig in and rank every story in the Mortal Kombat NRS era. But first, the Mortal Kombat series entered a state of dormancy despite the success of MK vs. DC Universe. Midway Games filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in February 2009, just 3 months following the release of MK vs. DC. Midway proceeded to sell the rights to the Mortal Kombat franchise to Warner Brothers. Midway Chicago, the team primarily behind the Mortal Kombat series, was renamed to NetherRealm Studios. NRS began working on the next installment in the series shortly after the acquisition. After a June 2010 reveal, a soft reboot titled simply Mortal Kombat arrived in April 2011. But wait, what's a soft reboot? I'm glad you asked, because it essentially shares the same continuity with the original series while also altering the events to create a new timeline. Now that the stage is set, let's get into the story. We open with the fallout of the Battle of Armageddon. All characters have seemingly perished, leaving just Raiden and Shao Kahn as the last two standing. As Shao Kahn begins to absorb Blaze's essence, Raiden sends a message to a past version of himself as a last-ditch effort to stop the Emperor. Past Raiden notices that his amulet is broken and recalls the phrase, "He must win." Chapters 1 through 5 cover the events of the first game, so let's hit the highlights. Johnny Cage tries and fails to impress Sonya.
And I'm taking you out for dinner.
Ugh.
After rescuing Jax, Sonya encounters her bitter rival Kano. She defeats Kano, but he lives to fight another day. Raiden shares his visions of Armageddon while trying to piece together exactly what they mean.
Foreseen events, like memories of my future. They lead me to believe that you are all connected to Earthrealm's fate.
What have you foreseen?
In my visions, Shao Kahn becomes invincible. He destroys all life in Earthrealm. We will all die. I believe these flashes are a guide to defeating Shao Kahn, but disrupting the flow of time can have serious consequences.
Scorpion seeks vengeance on Bihan, the first Sub-Zero that we meet in this game.
I have defeated the challenger, Shang Tsung. I demand Sub-Zero.
And after being manipulated by Quan Chi, he takes his life.
Shiroi Ryu are dead. You will suffer as they did.
To hell with your clan.
No. To hell with you!
The NetherRealm.
This is where I was reborn. This is where you will pay.
Scorpion,
kill him.
I will not. He has been beaten.
Have you forgotten?
What is this? No. No!
That is not me.
We are introduced to a human version of Cyrax who begins to question the Lin Kuei's cyber initiative. Liu Kang fights his way through the tournament, defeating Ermac, Kitana, Scorpion, Quan Chi, Goro, and finally the sorcerer Shang Tsung to win the tournament.
I concede.
Yeah! Well done, my friend.
Despite the win, Raiden's amulet remains cracked, signaling trouble and uncertainty about who the he in
He must win.
is referring to. Following his defeat, Shang Tsung begs Shao Kahn for another chance and proposes a second tournament. If Earthrealm wins this time, Kahn leaves for good. If not, he can begin to merge Earthrealm and Outworld.
The Emperor has an offer, Raiden. A new tournament.
I see no reason to participate in any plan of yours.
The Emperor proposes a single tournament to replace the current system of 10. It will be held in Outworld. If Earthrealm does not win, Outworld will absorb it. But if Earthrealm wins, Shao Kahn will abandon his claim to it forever.
Hear me, Elder Gods. I accept the terms proposed by Shao Kahn. We go to Outworld.
This arc follows Jax, Smoke, Kuai Liang, Kitana, Jade, and Kung Lao. Sonya is taken captive by the Outworld forces, only to be later rescued by Jax, Johnny Cage, and Raiden. We then see Smoke and Kuai Liang, the latter of which decides to drop his previous codename of Tundra and take up the Sub-Zero mantle.
Let us proceed then. Sub-Zero.
Smoke encounters a sticky situation in the Living Forest where he fights Shang Tsung and Kano. He's nearly taken captive until Raiden intervenes, preventing Smoke's cyberization. Kuai Liang later battles Cyrax, learns of his brother's fate, and defeats Scorpion, only to be captured by the Cyber Lin Kuei forces. We then move to Kitana, who begins doubting Shao Kahn after he publicly lambasts her for her failures.
How is it that Earthrealm ninjas brazenly appear before me when my daughter, Princess of Outworld, was sent to intercept them?
Father,
Begone!
She then fights Jade and walks into the Flesh Pits, where she is first introduced to Melina, a clone of herself mixed with Tarkatan DNA.
Huh? Sister.
Kitana defeats both Melina and Shang Tsung, taking the latter of the two to Shao Kahn, expecting justice. Only then does she learn that Kahn approved of these experiments and claims Melina as his daughter.
Your father was a weakling Adinian king. I annihilated him while merging his realm with Outworld, and took his queen as my wife. If only I had not allowed Sinbel to convince me of your worth. But now, I have a true daughter!
Kitana is ultimately captured and held captive. Shifting to Jade's chapter, she overhears all of this commotion and vows to free Kitana. Although she doesn't accomplish this task, she is able to alert Raiden's group, who send Liu Kang and Kung Lao to rescue her. Moving to Kung Lao's chapter, he defeats Noob Saibot, Goro, and Kintaro, but is brutally executed by Shao Kahn. Liu Kang retaliates and fights Shao Kahn, defeating him with a flaming punch through the abdomen. Unfortunately, Raiden's amulet continues to crack despite all of these Liu Kang victories. The Emperor also somehow lives thanks to Quan Chi's sorcery. To close out Act Number 2, Quan Chi proposes resurrecting Sindel in Earthrealm, which would bypass the rules and enable an all-out invasion. Act Number 3 is next, covering the Outworld invasion of Earthrealm during the events of MK3. Striker's chapter sees Raiden save Johnny Cage from death by Centaur, with Motaro dying in the process. We also see Kabal suffer the horrendous burns that he's famous for by Kintaro. In Kabal's chapter, Kano is able to revive him and gives him his iconic respirator and suit. We then witness Sindel returning to Shao Kahn's fortress, where Kahn drains Shang Tsung of his souls to boost Sindel's power. Kabal then encounters Redacted, otherwise known as the newly cyberized Kuai Liang, Cyber Sub-Zero, who he defeats. After Kabal waxes Cyber Sub-Zero, Jax works on him to eliminate the Cyber Initiative's control over him. With that issue resolved, Sub-Zero goes undercover, but it doesn't last very long. He proceeds to defeat Sector and later Goro and Kintaro to rescue a group of Earthrealm soldiers. To round out Cyber Sub-Zero's chapter, he confronts Noob Saibot, who he learns is his older brother Bi-Han.
Name Sub-Zero. Who are you to judge? I wore those colors before you. Bi-Han? Yes, Kuai Liang. It is I. Quan Chi restored me. Restored? You and I both. We are flawed copies of our former selves. I have no flaws. Quan Chi has perfected me.
The two fight and Kuai Liang defeats his brother, but Quan Chi is able to complete his spell to spawn a Soul NATO. Nightwolf's chapter begins with him sending Noob Saibot into said Soul NATO. He then returns to the church where Raiden's crew is hanging out, but Sindel arrives and absolutely cleans house, killing Kabal, Striker,
double kill,
Kuai Liang,
triple kill,
Jax,
overkill,
Smoke,
kill-tacular,
Jade,
kill-trocity,
and eventually Katana.
Kilimanjaro.
While this is unfolding, Raiden has taken his issues to the Elder Gods in an attempt to learn why none of his decisions have prevented the amulet from cracking. Raiden and Liu Kang return to the church after the Elder Gods inform them of how useless they really are, only to see Nightwolf sacrificing himself to neutralize Sindel.
By the Elder Gods.
And finally, we arrive at Raiden's chapter. Out of desperation, Raiden offers Quan Chi Earthrealm souls in exchange for help, only to learn that Quan Chi already owns them.
No!
You see, their souls are already mine. Shao Kahn's payment for Netherrealm's allegiance.
No! This was not meant to be.
Raiden finally understands that the visions make sense. He must win refers to Shao Kahn. Allowing Kahn to win would solidify that he did break the rules, which would mean the Elder Gods could intervene. While attempting to explain this to Liu Kang, a struggle ensues, and Raiden accidentally takes his life. The Thunder God allows Kahn to beat him down, triggering the Elder Gods' intervention. They boost Raiden's power, and with one final strike, he takes down Shao Kahn, ending his bid to take over Earthrealm. After all is said and done, only Raiden, Sonya, and Johnny Cage are left standing for Earthrealm. But in a stinger, Quan Chi reveals that he was working with Shinnok all along, setting the stage for the next Mortal Kombat game.
It is time. Soon I will be free. Earthrealm and Outworld will be ours.
That covers what I believe are the most important aspects of the MK9 storyline. So now we move to the positives and negatives. Positive number 1, nostalgia and fan service. Inject this nostalgia into my veins.
This deadly alliance.
I loved the story back in 2011, and I still have a soft spot for it today. MK9 gave us longtime fans the ideal portrayal of the story in the original 3 games, but of course, with some liberties taken. Instead of learning through lore digging and beating the game with each character, the story now plays out in front of our eyes. I know it might sound crazy, but this was revolutionary. We also got to experience almost every character in one way or another, which added another layer since we could watch how each character factors into the overall plot. For those of us who played the original trilogy, MK9 felt like something we always wanted because not only did it give us an honest portrayal of that story, but it added a unique twist stemming from Armageddon. Positive number 2 might just be an extension of number 1, but the cutscenes in this game were absolutely groundbreaking. It finally allowed the developers to properly tell a story, and it helps that we had several familiar faces to enjoy throughout the narrative, no matter how cheesy they were at times. As I touched on in my previous point, giving fans a captivating visual perspective of these characters and their different journeys made the MK9 storyline that much more enjoyable. For positive number 3, this roster is amongst the best in the entire series. In fact, my hot take is that apart from Armageddon and Trilogy, this is the best lineup across the franchise. Although not necessarily related to the story, the classic characters included in this game were a necessity for the soft reboot.
We are many, you are one.
That's not even including characters like Kenshi, Scarlet, and Rain, who did not factor much or at all into the story, but were eventually beloved additions to the roster. Although I don't feel all characters were created equally in the story since some were reduced to their typical henchman-like roles, it was great to see them anyway. Positive number 4 draws from something I mentioned back in Deadly Alliance and Deception, and that is that MK9 takes risks. While it is a reboot, killing Liu Kang once again wasn't something I expected, let alone having Raiden be the one that's responsible. The subversion of us getting Cyber Sub-Zero rather than Robo-Smoke was also incredible, considering it's something that could have happened in the original series. I also like that it's a continuation of what happened in Armageddon, even if there are some unanswered questions in that regard. Oh yeah, Kung Lao also dies halfway through the game. This game definitely subverted expectations. And there are some other notable risks taken, such as the removal of Shang Tsung midway through the game, Nightwolf's sacrifice, and the Revenants. Although most of these wouldn't matter long term, it was a genuine self-contained shock in this story. Notice something that I didn't mention? Yeah, we'll get to that. And for the 5th and final positive, the ending provided the perfect aura of what could be next. Shinnok finally had a chance to redeem himself after looking like a moron throughout most of the original timeline. There's no way that could disappoint, right? Don't worry, we'll get to it. But for what it's worth, as a standalone story, ignoring what came next, I loved the way MK9 ended. On that note, let's get to the negatives. For negative number 1, although I liked that Raiden had his flaws, I think the story made him out to be too oblivious. He couldn't seem to figure out why his amulet kept shattering, and I don't think there was enough urgency conveyed, considering this object set the story in motion. It wasn't until the closing moments that he understood what he must win actually meant. The villains are in a similar category, making odd decisions and just looking idiotic throughout much of the game. It's not a huge issue, but something definitely worth mentioning. My second negative is that so many characters are completely wasted in the story. Ermac, Melina, and Noob Saibot, some of the best in the series, are used as fodder for the most part. I suppose Ermac gets his time to shine against Jax, but loses to Stryker of all people. Melina in particular gets the short end of the stick, failing to win a single fight throughout the entire story. Even characters like Goro and Kintaro, sub-bosses many of us feared in the original trilogy, feel wasted with how they just lose again and again and again. I know there's only so much space to fill in the story, given the sheer size of the roster, but I had to point this out. Expanding a bit on negative 2, my third negative is that certain compelling arcs were completely abandoned. Case and point is Cyber Sub-Zero, who could have had a storyline for the ages, but it lasted all of 5 minutes, if that. I also wish we got more time with Kuai Liang and Bi-Han, since we had waited so many years for these two to meet in a meaningful way. As a side note, a mere Taven appearance would have been a solid way to wrap up that storyline, but instead, Shao Kahn's victory is a straightforward retcon. Any mention of Taven would have gone a long way, but I guess we'll just never know. Negative number 4 is a huge one. and all I have to say is
The Sindel Massacre.
while unexpected, it felt unnecessary and undeserved. I'm all for Sindel coming across as a powerful character, but it was comically bad how easily she racked up a body count in just a few minutes. This is a fairly common complaint about the MK9 story, and I'm completely on board with it. It's potentially the game's most glaring issue. And lastly, the Elder Gods are completely useless in this story. They snub Raiden when he seeks help and proceed to do nothing until the very end of the game. That's frustrating from the perspective of, well, this higher power exists to keep things in check. That just didn't happen. Overall, there's plenty of negatives to point toward to make an argument that this game is not great. It definitely has its flaws, but I do feel it has aged decently and executes most things well. The roster, character interactions, and swerves throughout were interesting additions. The bad parts do stick out like a sore thumb, and the structure of the story where you only get to play as the good guys leaves the villains on the back burner. Ermac, Noob Saibot, Melina, and the Shokan feel weak in the grand scheme of this story. Regardless of its flaws, I genuinely enjoy MK9, and I think it's amongst the best of the best in a series with consistent imperfection. I could realistically see a valid argument to put this anywhere between B and S tier, but for me, this is an S tier story.
Outstanding.
It honestly comes down to my personal bias, but I do believe that this belongs in the elite category.
I have no flaws. Quan Chi has perfected me.
Rated M for mature.
Fight!
After the Shinnok Quan Chi cliffhanger from MK9, Mortal Kombat X finally answered all our questions about Shinnok's role in the rebooted timeline. But before diving in, it's worth briefly mentioning the MKX comics, which help bridge the gap between MK9 and MKX. This 12-issue series introduces new characters like Cassie Cage, Takeda, and Devora, while expanding on key backstories. It covers storylines such as Kotal Khan's brutal rise to power, Scorpion regaining his humanity, and the downfall of Reiko and Havoc. We also get to learn about the death of Kenshi's wife at the hands of the Red Dragon, and why he gave Takeda up to Hanzo Hasashi and the Shirai Ryu. While not necessary to read, the comics are solid and add context to what would follow. Now, on to MKX. The story begins 2 years after MK9. The Netherrealm has launched a full-scale invasion of Earthrealm, and a combination of the Special Forces, Raiden, and Fujin are the primary line of defense. Shinnok, Quan Chi, and their Revenant army, which includes Jax, Smoke, Sindel, and others, target Raiden's Sky Temple to corrupt the Jinsei, Earth's life force. Johnny Cage, Sonya Blade, and Kenshi lead a defense, but struggle against the sorcerers.
Ready?
As always.
When all hope seems lost, Johnny taps into a mysterious green energy and manages to defeat Shinnok, allowing Raiden to seal him inside his own amulet. Amidst all the chaos, Quan Chi is able to escape. The story then jumps 20 years. Johnny Cage is older and is now the leader of a new generation of warriors, consisting of Cassie Cage, his own daughter, Jackie Briggs, Jax's daughter, Takeda, who is Kenshi's son, and Kung Jin, who is Kung Lao's cousin. Meanwhile, in Outworld, Kotal Khan rules as emperor, but the former Outworld ruler Melina threatens his position. Following this failed ambush, it's revealed that she now possesses Shinnok's amulet. Upon learning about the amulet, Earthrealm and Outworld agree to work together to track down Mileena and take her down for good. Later on, Sonya Blade and the Special Forces manage to locate Kano, who reveals Mileena's location in the
Watan jungle.
Cassie Cage and D'Vorah lead the charge on this mission, successfully capturing Mileena and delivering her to Kotal Khan. In one of MKX's most gruesome moments, Kotal orders her execution, and D'Vorah carries it out with a flesh-eating insect kiss. However, it's revealed that D'Vorah is secretly working with Quan Chi. She steals the amulet, and upon discovering her betrayal, Kotal believes that she was working for Raiden and not Quan Chi.
D'Vorah and the Earthrealmers?
She stole the amulet, then helped them escape.
She betrayed us to the Thunder God.
Kotal Khan also violates his agreement with Earthrealm, imprisoning the combat kids who later escape. After Sonya recruits Jax back into action following his stint as a Revenant, he and Kenshi head to the Netherrealm. They team up with Serena to fight the Revenants and ultimately capture Quan Chi.
Kenshi, I got him.
Hanzo and the Shirai Ryu quietly arrive where Quan Chi is being held, intending to exact vengeance on him. When Sonya refuses so they can use Quan Chi to restore the Revenants, Hanzo goes beast mode and subdues everyone.
Unbind him.
However, just as he deals the fatal blow, D'Vorah tosses the amulet to Quan Chi, who swiftly releases Shinnok from the amulet.
Blood for blood. Your debt is paid.
Back in control, Shinnok overpowers the Earthrealm forces and takes Johnny as a prisoner. The fallen Elder God then heads to the Sky Temple, where Raiden returns to restore his power. The Thunder God had been trapped in a snare set by Kano when he lifted the real amulet and traded it out with a fake one. While in the Jinsei, Shinnok arrives with his Revenant crew, takes down Bo Raicho, and begins corrupting the Jinsei. Shinnok mutates into a corrupted version of himself, creating this nightmarish beast. Meanwhile, the Special Forces make it through an Outworld blockade thanks to Kuai Liang and finally reach the Sky Temple. Just like her father 20 years ago, Cassie unlocks the same green energy and defies all odds to defeat Shinnok.
Exquisite death.
You son of a bitch!
The good guys then drop Raiden into the Jinsei to restore him once again as the story concludes. But wait, there's more. In the epilogue, Raiden, now tainted by Shinnok's corruption, makes it clear that Earthrealm will no longer show mercy to its enemies. To prove his point, he tosses Shinnok's severed head at Liu Kang and Kitana, who now rule the Netherrealm, before delivering this infamous warning.
There are fates worse than death.
Okay, that was a lot of information. I did skip over a few flashbacks that add more context to the story, like D'Vorah taking Baraka's life, Takeda training with the Shirai Ryu, Raiden being able to restore revenants, and Kuai Liang revealing proof to Hanzo that Quan Chi executed his clan.
Exterminated the Shirai Ryu as promised.
Hanzo Hasashi lives. He's your Spectre Scorpion.
Is it mechanically possible for you to fuck yourself?
Let's break down the positives and negatives of the Mortal Kombat X story. I'm starting the positives off with my favorite arc of the game, and that is Hanzo Hasashi. After Raiden cured him, Scorpion was effectively no more. We then see him on his redemption arc, training Takeda, helping repair the age-old conflict with the Lin Kuei, and learning that Quan Chi was in fact responsible for what happened to the Shirai Ryu. This all led up to the moment where he chopped off Quan Chi's head, making him pay for all of his transgressions.
Blood for blood. Your debt is paid.
My second positive is the Outworld dilemma between Kotal and Mileena. I enjoyed that Mileena desperately wanted to regain the Outworld throne, and thought the writers did a solid job developing Kotal Khan. There are some interesting twists and turns in this arc that cast doubt over who is loyal to who. But overall, Kotal came off as a character willing to do anything for Outworld, the complete opposite of Shao Kahn, who just wanted domination. For positive number 3, and I know the Revenant aspect of the story gets a bad rap, but I thoroughly appreciated the direction it took. We got to see some tragic elements out of this storyline, specifically with Liu Kang and Kung Lao before their fights with Raiden. The mere presence of the Revenants added another layer of danger to Quan Chi and Shinnok. I could see why some people didn't like it, especially considering how it began, but for the most part, I thought MKX handled the Revenants in this game well. Keep that in mind for later. For positive number 4, I thought the inclusion of the ancillary characters like Serena, Rain, Li Mei, and even Bo Raicho were executed well. Although they didn't factor much into the grand scheme of the plot, I always enjoy when NetherRealm shows love to these fan-favorite characters, even if the majority never got a DLC spot. Positive number 5 is all about the atmosphere of this game. It's dark and dreary at points, a serious contrast from MK9. The NetherRealm invasion to open the game instilled a sense of dread that I felt was fitting of a Mortal Kombat story. Although the tone didn't necessarily remain consistent, going from the Sindel massacre to this game made it seem as though anyone could lose their life at any point. The sixth and final positive I have is Dark Raiden, and that is specifically in a vacuum, not including anything that happened after this. I found it interesting the way Shinnok corrupted the Jinsei, and Raiden's next stint in the Jinsei after Shinnok's defeat resulted in this evil SOB, but not the traditional kind of make the world burn evil. Instead, he was willing to do anything necessary to protect Earthrealm, which, let's be honest, is almost never in a good spot. The way he walks in and tosses Shinnok's severed head to show he means business was an incredible ending. Now to the negatives, and for number 1, this game somehow fell into the Dark Khan trap, albeit to a lesser extent. Shinnok is present at the beginning before losing to Johnny and disappearing until the final act. I expected more in his triumphant return to the series, especially after Midway previously fumbled the opportunity to showcase Shinnok as a legitimate threat. Ultimately, he has limited screen time and loses twice, definitely not ideal. Taking -1 a step further, I am in the camp of those who believe Cassie did not earn her victory over Shinnok. She's inexperienced and not developed enough to be given such an important moment in the series. I would have preferred a situation where Cassie puts up a solid effort, but ends up losing and Johnny comes in and defeats him again. That would have showed that Cassie is formidable but not experienced enough to defeat a literal god. That's just my opinion though. Negative number 3 counters a positive I mentioned earlier, and that is the fact that the Revenant storyline sidelines so many characters. Jade, Smoke, Cabal, Katana, Striker, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Nightwolf. That's an insane number of established MK characters that don't add much to this game overall. I did like the angle where Raiden was able to restore Jax, Kuai Liang, and Scorpion, and wish we got to see a bit more of that. Even a situation where Raiden fights to save the Shaolin monks where they are caught between Revenant and human would have added some emotional depth. But alas, they are just there as henchmen for Quan Chi and nothing more. There are some solid moments and emotional beats, but sidelining so many characters created a serious issue. For negative number 4, I feel that there was just a lot of time wasting. The writers expended so much of the runtime attempting to develop the Kombat Kids, and apart from Takeda, there isn't much going on there. As a result, this situation sacrificed the roles and development of the more prominent characters. MK9 fell into this trap a bit as well, with meaningless fights that don't add much to the plot, but we had a whole chapter of Kung Jin just running through newer, interesting characters with no real payoff. Negative number 5 revolves around the story's failure to develop the villains. For example, Ermac and Reptile are two of the most beloved characters in the series, and they don't have much to do here. And this isn't a big roster by any stretch, so more love or interesting arcs for these characters would have been nice. Perhaps a smaller complaint, but this is something the story has consistently struggled with, and it's present here. Oh yeah, and let's not forget how they did Melina. Just tragic. That brings me to my 5th and final negative, and that is that the new characters were not developed well. And this extends beyond the Kombat Kids. Ferritor and Erron Black have almost nothing to offer the story apart from being part of Kotal Khan's enforcers. I wanted to learn more about these two in particular. Meanwhile, Devora's body count continued to rise with every passing minute. I was fine with that, apart from her killing Melina like she did, but it would have been nice if the writers spread the love a bit in that department. I remember playing through Mortal Kombat X and enjoying the experience, but boy does this game have some serious issues from a storyline perspective. There's just a lot that missed the mark for me from start to finish. The setup that closed out MK9 was intriguing, and I don't believe MKX provided a satisfying follow-up. Don't get me wrong, there is plenty to like about the MKX story, but there are just too many issues for me to put it amongst the elite games. The Special Forces-centric story, Shinnok being an underwhelming boss yet again, the Kombat Kids eating up most of the screen time, and there are some other gripes I've outlined. But on the Kombat Kids, I'm generally fine with new characters. I like Devora, Kotal Khan, Ferritor, and Erron Black, even if some of the new characters don't have much to do. But apart from Cassie and Takeda, I don't think these 4 characters are enough to drive the plot convincingly. Also on Shinnok, I actually liked him quite a bit in this game, but the story just handles him terribly. He was there at the beginning, absent for a good portion of the game as I pointed out, and returns down the stretch to lose in devastating fashion. I almost would have been fine if Quan Chi took the reins as the primary antagonist and maybe teased Shinnok at the end of this game. Either way, that part felt like such wasted potential, but for the most part, I feel this is one of the more forgettable stories of the NRS era. As much as I wanted to give this game more love in the tier list, I can't in good conscience put it any higher than B tier.
There are fates worse than death.
No matter the reason, the time to fight will come. And when it does, you'll be ready. Ready to stand and fight.
Four more years passed by before NetherRealm Studios graced fans with a sequel to Mortal Kombat X. Not many knew what to expect apart from the usual characters and a continuation of the story that began in 2011 with MK9. What would happen with the Revenants? Who would succeed Shinnok as the main antagonist? How could this series possibly continue without Melina? These were the questions we needed answers to. Ultimately, what NRS delivered split the fanbase. Some believed this was an underwhelming sequel, while others enjoyed the narrative direction. Let the multiverse insanity begin as we dive into Mortal Kombat 11. This game arrived in 2019, picking up sometime after Shinnok's demise in the previous game. In the prologue, Raiden stuck to his word, torturing Shinnok since he cannot die.
There are fates worse than death.
Now referred to as Dark Raiden, he possesses Shinnok's amulet, and we get to see Raiden remove Shinnok's head. He prepares to bring Shinnok's head to the Revenants as a warning, which we saw in the MKX epilogue, before time freezes and we meet the antagonist of this game, Kronika, the Keeper of Time and a Titan, which ranks higher than Elder Gods in this universe. After seeing what Raiden did to Shinnok, Kronika makes it her goal to correct the universe. This game opens 2 years later, with Raiden warning the Special Forces of an impending Netherrealm invasion. Cassie Cage leads an assault on Shinnok's Bone Temple, but the mission turns tragic when Revenant Liu Kang traps Sonya, forcing her to sacrifice herself to save the rest.
Mom, no, don't!
Meanwhile, Kronika reverses time to undo the temple's destruction and begins assembling allies, beginning with Revenant Kitana and Liu Kang.
It need not be. I intend to wind time back to its beginning and restart history. But even with my vast power, I cannot create this new era alone.
Later on, we see Kotal Kahn cleaning up Outworld of Collector, a remaining Shao Kahn loyalist. Suddenly, a past version of Shao Kahn emerges through the sands of time alongside past versions of many warriors. The others returning due to Kronika's time manipulation include Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Raiden, Kitana, and a few others. Back with the Special Forces, Johnny Cage, Sonya Blade, and Jax all return from the past, while Dark Raiden disappears, much to my disappointment, considering how much he was featured in the marketing. We then learn that these characters were taken from the rebooted MK2 tournament after Kung Lao defeated Quan Chi and Shang Tsung.
We were at the Mortal Kombat tournament. Kung Lao had just defeated Shang Tsung and Quan Chi.
Confused about why his former general is now a Khan, Shao Kahn and Kotal Kahn fight, with the latter emerging victorious.
You are Khan no more.
D'Vorah suddenly arrives through a portal, collecting Shao Kahn and his allies, where they meet Kronika and agree to form an alliance.
You can wipe Raiden from history?
My hourglass requires protection while I work. Will your Outworld armies defend it?
They shall.
Later on, past Liu Kang and Kung Lao head to the Wu Shi Academy, battling past Kronika's forces. Despite overcoming a few obstacles, including Geras, he is able to flex his true power of freezing time and snatching the Jinsei vials from the Shaolin monks with ease. Next, we see the incredible duo of Sub-Zero and Scorpion finally united as a team.
Your hearing is failing, Sub-Zero. I recognized your footsteps, Hanzo.
They infiltrate a supposed Cyber Lin Kuei facility where they find the Lin Kuei being mutilated to build an army. They successfully breach the area, defeating Frost, Bihan, and Sector along the way. They are able to reprogram Cyrax, who shuts down the program for good, including himself. However, Frost and past Bihan escape with Sector's body. Seeking an alliance themselves, the unlikely couple of Kotal and Jade infiltrate the Kaitin Hive. Jade defeats her Revenant counterpart and D'Vorah, ultimately learning where Shao Kahn is located. After successfully confirming his location at a Tarkatan camp, Jade sneaks in but is discovered. Kotal arrives shortly after and wants to annihilate the inhabitants, but Jade intervenes and defeats him. This leads to Shao Kahn effortlessly walking in and capturing both Kotal and Jade. Later on, Raiden approaches the Elder Gods only to find that all are gone except for Cetrion, who reveals she is Kronika's daughter and Shinnok's sister. We then learn of Kronika's plan to restart time in an effort to balance good and evil like the universe intended. This would ensure that the fighting would never stop, which would maintain that balance. Since Raiden disrupted the balance of time by doing what he did to Shinnok, Kronika intends to erase him. Shifting back to the Special Forces, an attack on their base begins, with the Black Dragon and the Cyber Lin Kuei at the helm. It turns out Kano was able to utilize Sector's body to restart the manufacturing of these cyborgs. The Special Forces do their best to fend off their attackers, but past Johnny Cage nearly takes a bullet, which reinforces what's at stake if a past version of a character expires. Despite their efforts, past Sonya is captured and Cassie is left injured. Johnny then embarks on a solo mission to rescue Sonya. He defeats Sector and past Kano before taking a bullet to the leg by present Kano. The villains ultimately escape with past Sonya and Johnny, as Sector is left to self-destruct. But Raiden arrives just in time to escort the remaining special forces to safety. Moving to Kitana's chapter, she seeks to unite Outworld and eliminate her returning father. She attempts to convince Queen Shiva to join her rebellion, but she won't unless Kotal Khan signs off. Kitana, Liu Kang, and Kung Lao embark on a mission where she defeats Scarlet, rescues Jade, and earns Baraka's loyalty, who agrees to help her on her mission. She then leads an assault on Shao Kahn's Coliseum, where Kotal is badly injured in a fight with the Emperor. Kitana then finally faces off with her adopted father, where she defeats and blinds him. As a result of his injuries, Kotal declares Kitana the new Khan of Outworld.
That is up to her now.
What?
The throne is yours. You have united Outworld, Kitana Khan.
The Special Forces launch a rescue mission for Sonya. Sonya then eliminates past Kano, erasing both versions from existence. Meanwhile, Jackie and past Jax retrieve Kronika's crown, but present Jax, shockingly aligned with Kronika in hopes of ensuring his daughter's safety in the new era, betrays them and hands it over. With the crown in her possession, comprised of souls from Shang Tsung's island, Kronika's plan is nearly complete. While in the Netherrealm in search of the ferryman Charon, Scorpion sends Sub-Zero away to continue his mission solo. He finds D'Vorah torturing Charon for information before throwing a spear into her and then defeating her. He tries to convince the past version of himself that following Kronika is not the way.
The clan of imposters will indeed fall. I've restored the Shirai Ryu. Built a clan that's never been stronger. On a foundation of pretenders and outsiders, Kronika told me.
This serves as an unintended distraction, as D'Vorah fatally poisons present Scorpion, who dies in the arms of his former self.
Poison. The new Shirai Ryu are worthy. It's heart, not blood, that makes them warriors.
We then learn the extent of Kronika's time manipulation, when Raiden, while under the influence of Shinnok's amulet, recalls multiple instances of he and Liu Kang fighting. Kronika suddenly emerges, capturing past Liu Kang, before Revenant Liu Kang merges with the past version. Raiden fights and defeats this powered-up version of Liu Kang before merging with him, creating Fire God Liu Kang.
I would rather see you.
The final battle erupts as Earthrealm and Outworld forces storm Kronika's keep. Fire God Liu Kang defeats Cetrion, then faces Kronika in a cinematic fight through time itself. Emerging victorious, Liu Kang takes control of the Hourglass. In the canonical ending, he meets a now mortal Raiden, who entrusts him with reshaping history as the new Keeper of Time. That was just over 3 hours of story condensed for time's sake. so if I missed a few things, forgive me. There are some tidbits of the story I passed over, but we will address a few in the next segment. As you can see, we've come a long way from the first game. The stories have gotten much more elaborate these days, but let's move on to the analysis, beginning with what I liked. For the first positive, despite how complicated it seems in nature, I liked how the story played out from the cinematic cutscenes to the storytelling. Armageddon was a game that confused me, and I don't believe the overarching story was properly communicated. We are a far cry from that now, and I think the storytellers did a good job conveying the plot, even with the time manipulation aspect. As we know with pretty much every multiverse storyline in Hollywood and elsewhere, it's difficult to keep track of everything going on, but I thought MK11 provided a fine balance of, oh wait, what's this all about? And, oh, now I understand. It's definitely not suited for someone just walking into the franchise with this game, but as someone who enjoyed MK9 and moderately enjoyed MKX, I enjoyed MK11 for the most part. For positive number 2, which expands a bit on the first positive, although the multiverse aspect has become a point of contention, I have a soft spot for it just because of how it ties in with the previous 2 games. I thought it was cool that the past characters came from events that happened during MK9 and how they stuck around for most of the game. I also enjoyed the interactions between the Johnny Cages and even Kano, especially since, from Johnny Cage's perspective, it shows how much he's matured over the last 3 games. However, that doesn't mean it's completely perfect, because it's not. But we'll get there soon, don't worry. From a character perspective, positive number 3 revolves around Katana's rise to power in Outworld. Although it happened pretty fast, it's something I didn't expect going into the game, and it felt earned after all she's been through in the story. She finally conquered her vile adoptive father and enjoyed a brief reign as Khan, which was a nice element to include. Another arc I liked quite a bit was Liu Kang's, who kind of got shafted in MK9 and MKX. Raiden mistakenly took his life in MK9 and he spent all of MKX as a revenant. He deserved to return as his past version and ascend to Fire God status. The brief dynamic between past Liu Kang and Revenant Liu Kang was intriguing, since the past version started to identify with what Revenant Kang was saying. At the end, it felt like a complete arc, and him becoming the Keeper of Time felt earned in my opinion. For positive number 5, say what you will about Kronika, but that final fight was one of the best in Mortal Kombat history. The location changing, her ability to morph, even if it wasn't original, and her moveset made it a challenging fight. There is a certain cinematic aspect to the fight that made it feel gratifying to finally defeat her in the end. I also enjoyed the different possible outcomes, with all 3 being canonical in their own way, I suppose. Because, you know, multiverse. The 6th and final positive is just how certain characters were handled. The Scorpion Sub-Zero team-up was great, Baraka had a great arc, Jax's was emotional even if it felt a bit forced, the 2 Johnny Cages, the Shaolin monks were done incredibly well, and there are a few more. Overall, I think the story did justice to many of these characters, but definitely not all of them. Now to the negatives. Although the final fight was insane, Kronika was an underwhelming antagonist. She wasn't developed well enough for my liking, and it honestly felt like the writers just dropped her into the story. From the ending of MKX to the beginning of MK11, I couldn't comprehend how this was the direction the story went. I didn't find Kronika intimidating whatsoever, unlike Shang Tsung, Shao Kahn, and Onaga, who felt like legitimate threats. Inventing Titans seemingly out of thin air as beings higher and more powerful than Elder Gods went against everything we knew about Mortal Kombat, and I just wasn't a fan. Negative number 2, and this is a huge one, is the decision to abandon the Dark Raiden arc. That would have been a subversion on the level of Deadly Alliance Liu Kang had the writers followed through with it. I'm not sure what happened, but I would have embraced a game where Earthrealm has to band together to check Raiden on his relentless mission to protect Earthrealm. It had so much promise, but it was dropped quickly and never fully realized. The possibilities and moral dilemmas presented in that storyline could have been generational, but we may never know. Negative number 3 is the handling of the Revenants, who were absolutely left on the back burner here. While they were glorified henchmen in MKX, there were some redeeming qualities, hence why I included them in the positives in that game. The reveal of Katana and Liu Kang tag teaming as rulers of the Netherrealm seemed interesting, but it also didn't have much of a payoff here. Kronika swept in and took control while the remaining Revenants had little impact on the story. I genuinely believe the Revenants could have played out better, but the threat of their presence slowly declined. Their handling in MK11 felt like an obstacle for the writers to navigate, as opposed to something they could lean into and embrace. It would have been cool if this game revisited Raiden's ability to restore Revenants, but they just fell flat overall. Negative number 4 is that certain characters just felt absolutely wasted. I'm looking at you, Bi-Han. You can't tell me that he wasn't shoehorned into this game just because he's popular. Although I like his character design, he probably should have sat this one out after the whole Soul NATO thing, or at least offer a better explanation than
Quan Chi's creations do not die easily.
Collector also felt wasted as yet another lame henchman with no uniqueness to his story. I personally would have preferred anyone else, like Reptile maybe, Ermac. I would have even taken Takeda or Kung Jin, who aren't even mentioned in the story despite being important in MKX. Some others that felt wasted included Cabal, Scarlet, Aaron Black again, and even Kotal Khan to an extent. Sure, they were all present and they had a role in the story, but some of them had zero impact. And let's not forget that Kotal Khan followed up an underwhelming finish in MKX with a loss to Shao Kahn. Just meh. Piggybacking off of that, can we talk about how lame Shao Kahn's return was? I mean, the return itself was interesting with how it happened, but he never looked particularly strong. He got whooped by Kotal, sided with Kronika, captured Kotal, severely injured Kotal, and then lost to Katana. I would have preferred Shao Kahn to look stronger, especially before Katana defeated him, because that would have felt more earned. But I suppose Aftermath sort of righted that wrong. Negative number 6 is, and I'm on board with everyone on this one, that D'Vorah being the one to take down Scorpion was deflating, to say the least. Anger is not the kind of emotion that a moment like that should evoke, and that's primarily because why D'Vorah? She had limited history with Scorpion, and the two had minimal encounters before she stabs and poisons him. Hanzo's arc from MK9 to MK11 was one of the best going, and this completely derailed it. I think, and I know this is a popular criticism, that Bi-Han being the one to eliminate Scorpion would have boosted this story exponentially. That would have increased Bi-Han's presence and impact while making it feel like an outcome that made sense. But alas, like Baraka and Melina before him, Hanzo fell victim to D'Vorah, a character that I honestly like. My final negative is the writer's inability to eliminate someone from the story indefinitely. And I know, this is nothing new to this series, but I mean Sonya dies in the first chapter and she's back just a few minutes later. Hanzo dies at the end, but don't worry, we have past Scorpion here. Liu Kang and Kung Lao are Revenants. Oh look, they're back from the past. Remember when Baraka died in MKX? There he is, but I'll forgive them for that one. What was stopping the writers from bringing back Shinnok or Quan Chi? But back to my overall point. I feel as though these seemingly tragic moments lose importance and emotional impact when there are other versions of these characters running around the universe. Before giving it a ranking, I'd like to say that MK11 is one of the more polarizing stories in the NRS era without question. From what I've seen, you either love it or hate it, and there's no real middle ground. Listen, I'll be the first to admit this story has its problems, and a lot of them. But I do think it's a better overall story than MKX. Where Shinnok was completely absent and the story felt directionless in that game, Kronika was present throughout and did some actual damage. Were some of her decisions dumb? Absolutely. She's not the perfect antagonist by any means. I mean, just go check where I ranked her in the final boss tier list. But the multiverse brought some interesting factors into play. I can both criticize a game and enjoy what it had to offer when all was said and done. The biggest issue for me is the complete removal of this Dark Raiden subplot. I would have loved to see the alternate universe where the Thunder God goes full evil and what that would have presented. Unfortunately, we didn't get that, and Kronika taking that position hurts the story overall. I also didn't dig too deep into this, but the retcons in MK11 are a huge issue. Most notably, Cabal being evil and Scarlet going from somewhat of a female Ermac but made from blood to a person Shao Kahn rescued from the streets, I guess?
To think, you once roamed the streets.
I owe my place to your generosity.
I will say that I liked most of what MK11 had to offer, but the glaring negatives outweigh the positives in my opinion. I played around with the idea of giving MK11 an A tier grade, but the removal of Dark Raiden knocks it down a full grade for me to B tier.
Would you settle for me, sausage?
Our work is finished, Liu Kang.
Lord Raiden.
It falls upon you to architect a new history.
Then together, let us begin.
Cease, Liu Kang. Before you doom us all.
Shang Tsung?
So yeah, you may have noticed that I completely disregarded the Aftermath storyline. The reason for that is I think it stands well enough on its own to cover and rank separately. So that's what I'm gonna do. 1 year following the release of MK11, NRS released an expansion DLC called Aftermath, as I mentioned just seconds ago. This follows the perspectives of several DLC characters, including Fujin, Shang Tsung, Nightwolf, Sindel, and a few more. Let's get into the story and see how it shakes out. MK11 Aftermath picks up immediately after the main story. As Liu Kang attempts to forge a new era, a portal opens. Out steps Shang Tsung, Fujin, and Nightwolf. They reveal that they did not agree to join Kronika's cause and were thus trapped in the void. Shang Tsung says that since Kronika's crown was destroyed when Liu Kang defeated her, all time will shatter if he attempts to use the hourglass. Despite Raiden's deep distrust of Shang Tsung, understandably of course, they agree to send the trio back in time to retrieve the crown. Shang Tsung, Nightwolf, and Fujin arrive during Kitana's battle with Shao Kahn, narrowly avoiding detection. However, Collector ultimately discovers them, which blows the lid off their plan. Knowing they'll need allies, they plan to restore Sindel from her revenant form using Earthrealm's Jinsei. After gathering the Jinsei, they travel to the Netherrealm, where they are captured by Revenant Liu Kang, Kitana, and Nightwolf. While imprisoned, Sindel appears but is defeated by Nightwolf. In the process, Shang Tsung is badly injured by Revenant Nightwolf, forcing him to absorb the Revenant Nightwolf's soul to survive after past Nightwolf defeats him. The trio escape and turn to Shiva, convincing her to grant them access to the Soul Chamber to properly restore Sindel. With Shang Tsung disguised, they make it past Kotal and successfully restore Sindel's humanity. Sindel, appearing reformed, embraces Kitana and tells her the truth. She didn't take her own life. Quan Chi was responsible. Shang Tsung and Fujin secure Kronika's crown, and we even get a subtle reference to Mortal Kombat mythology Sub-Zero, when Fujin encounters Bi-Han.
A new trick, Bi-Han? Amusing, but insufficient.
You lost to me at your temple, Fujin. Now Kronika has made me even stronger.
You did not win that fight. You ran away.
Cetrion arrives to intervene, only to be overpowered by Sindel and the rest of this unorthodox team. As Shang Tsung and Fujin return, past Raiden is skeptical of Shang Tsung's true intentions. Rightfully so, once again.
Since when are you friends with this filth?
After a brief scuffle where Raiden uses Shinnok's amulet, Kronika appears and reveals that Shang Tsung designed the crown.
Have you wondered why Shang Tsung knows so much about my crown?
Because he did your bidding, gathering souls to fuel it.
Shang Tsung is far too modest. The crown is his design.
Fujin then dons the crown, making Kronika vulnerable, allowing them to be rid of her for the time being. Following her resurrection, the story confirms that Sindel was evil all along. She betrays Shiva, frees Shao Kahn, restores him back to health, gains the allegiance of the Shao Kahn forces, and they ultimately decimate Kitana's forces, leaving Liu Kang critically injured. Kung Lao also gets tossed in the Sea of Blood, and Kotal has his head removed. Meanwhile, as the heroes storm Kronika's keep, Shang Tsung betrays everyone, posing as Raiden to steal the crown for himself.
Thank you. Your lies are revealed, sorcerer.
Shang Tsung?
You should be more vigilant, Fujin. Now bear witness, as the power to decide destiny becomes mine.
With its power, he absorbs the souls of Fujin, Raiden, Sindel, and Shao Kahn, declaring himself ruler of time after taking down Kronika.
Time and destiny are now mine to command. Every realm will bend to my will.
However, Fire God Liu Kang emerges.
Liu Kang, I thought your duties required you stayed behind.
He reveals that he allowed the events to play out as they did, and that only Shang Tsung could use the crown and defeat Kronika.
The hourglass showed that only I could wield the crown against Kronika successfully. You let me win. And to ensure victory, you sacrificed the lives of your friends. How deliciously cold-blooded.
Although many lives were lost, it would all be rectified in Liu Kang's new era. The two then fight in a classic Liu Kang-Shang Tsung showdown. This leads to two possible endings. In ending number 1, Liu Kang prevails, takes the crown, and forges his new era.
Kung Lao, where did you... Who are you?
I am Lord Liu Kang, God of Thunder and Fire.
God of... Forgive my disrespect, my lord.
Enough, Kung Lao. You are humble, not like the Kung Lao I knew.
The Kung Lao you knew?
A story for another time. I have chosen you as my champion, Kung Lao. We have work to do. You must be prepared. Trained.
Trained? For what?
In ending number 2, Shang Tsung wins, enslaving all realms and seizing ultimate power.
Speak, minions.
My lord, your will is done.
Outworld, Earthrealm, the Netherrealm, all are conquered.
Per your command, Chaos Realm and Order Realm are next. All realms will soon yield to your influence.
It has begun.
That covers the highlights of MK11 Aftermath. Although short, it had some solid moments, but we will address all of the good and bad in the next segment.
Your soul is mine.
My number one positive about Aftermath is the fact that you can play as actual villains. From MK9 through MK11, we only got to play as the bad guys a few times. As a result, it felt like the villains weren't developed as well and were kind of left on the sideline. This created a situation where there was almost no reason to fear any of them, since we always knew how these fights would go down.
Spitting? Sticking out your tongue? Bet your mama's real proud.
Despite the whole Twindell thing, I thought it was cool and morally confusing to beat down the good guys for once. Even playing as a powered-up Shang Tsung was a fun twist on the story. These were the best parts of the entire expansion in my opinion. For positive number 2, I have to commend the roster of characters included in Aftermath, from Fujin to Nightwolf, and of course the outstanding Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa as Shang Tsung. I will never complain when we get to play as these characters in a meaningful way, especially the unlikely trio at the helm of the story. They each had some solid moments throughout, particularly when the Revenants came into the equation. Positive number 3 shockingly revolves around how this story handled time travel. I thought it was cool to see Fujin, Nightwolf, and Shang go back to the Colosseum, and how this had such a profound effect on the rest of the story. How and why they went there is a whole different story, but it was interesting to see them jump through time and how Kronika, Geras, and Cetrion could monitor and attempt to handle the situation. It also allowed us to see how other stories like Shao Kahn and Kotal Kahn played out, as opposed to how they ended in the main story. The time travel aspect isn't always great, but I think Aftermath handled this element better than the main story. Positive number 4 is Shang Tsung. This is probably the best execution and portrayal of Shang to date, and it's not even close.
Why are we listening to this snake?
Because I am a snake who's toiled beside Kronika, learning her secrets. I know them. Do you?
He was in real Shang form, and even though you knew the swerve was coming, there was at least a tiny shred of mystery about when and if he'd turn. The closing stretch was well deserved for a character who had so few wins throughout the series. Make no mistake about it, MK11 Aftermath is the Shang Tsung show, and I thoroughly enjoyed the ride. Aftermath showcased what the sorcerer is capable of when he's not getting beaten down left and right, from his powers to his ability to deceive, almost giving Deadly Alliance vibes. Positive number 5 piggybacks off of 4, and that is the redemption of Shao Kahn in the story. He looked like an absolute loser for the most part in the main story. Even though I enjoyed the moment where Kitana finally defeated her father, I just felt it did zero for Shao Kahn as this intimidating presence who apparently can only lose. He was genuinely brutal and relentless in Aftermath to the very end. Like Shang Tsung, I thought Shao Kahn's redemption arc was well deserved, and this finally made him look like the powerhouse we know he can be. I thought the writers did a good job on that. Positive number 6 is all about the ending sequence. Everything from the full circle showdown between longtime bitter rivals Liu Kang and Shang Tsung was, as they say, absolute cinema. I felt that this complemented the Kronika fight in the main story quite well, with a better developed and more established villain. On this same subject, I also enjoyed the dichotomy of the two endings, with Shang Tsung conquering the realms alongside Dark Raiden and Dark Fujin and saying his iconic line,
"It has begun."
Liu Kang's ending saw him create his new era, complete with visiting the Great Kung Lao, designating him as the Chosen One, and beginning his journey. Most of us know how these two endings would play out in the long run. Lastly, and I've mentioned this a few times in previous games, but Aftermath takes risks. Although they don't have much consequence when all is said and done, Shao Kahn and Sindel's chapter threw so much at me that I didn't expect. Case in point, Kotal's severed head, and Liu Kang having his legs broken. Then moving to Shang Tsung's chapter, where he takes Fujin and Raiden's soul, while there is still plenty of time left in the story. Subversion is important, because otherwise it's just predictable. While Aftermath does have predictable elements, the villain arcs were well done. Now for the negatives. First and foremost, and you may have expected it, but Twindell.
Here was a man unashamed to assert his privilege, and who vowed to protect mine. I had found my true love, and to consecrate our bond, I killed Jared for him.
Tell me I misheard.
This was a colossal failure and one of the worst retcons in a series with many, many retcons. This may be difficult to believe, but Sindel shockingly wasn't intentionally evil at any point until this game. And I just don't get why. Her MK9 bio explicitly says she's a victim of Shao Kahn. It also says she took her own life, which was retconned as well into Quan Chi doing the deed.
Wife, I have missed you. If Quan Chi were here, I'd hoist him by the ankles and split him through for all the time he stole from us.
Although it led to arguably the best chapter of the expansion, the Scream Queen's sudden shift to evil felt wrong from every conceivable angle. It undermined everything we knew up to this point, and I think the slightest adjustment could have been made if the writers truly wanted her to be a villain. For negative number 2, the whole plot feels kind of forced.
In defeating Kronika, you destroyed her crown. Without it, you can't restart history. The hourglass will shatter. All realms will be lost.
Fujin, is this true?
Kronika's every action was taken to ensure her crown's preparation. She would not dare to restart history without it.
I mean, we just defeated Kronika in this epic battle, which culminated in an emotional moment between Liu Kang and a now human Raiden, which functioned as kind of a passing of the torch, if you will. All of a sudden, these three stumble out of a portal and invent this scenario where the crown is more important than Liu Kang becoming the Keeper of Time. I get that the storylines in this franchise are outrageous just at face value, but I think there could have been a bit more creativity injected into Aftermath. Had they emphasized the importance of the crown in the main storyline, I would have been fine with it. But they didn't. We are just supposed to care about the crown and how Liu Kang's journey in the main storyline was ultimately incomplete. I can't ignore that Liu Kang let all of this happen despite knowing it would happen. I don't know, that just feels weird to me. Expanding a bit on that point, negative 3 is the fact that Kronika makes no attempt to foil anyone's plans. She can literally see these events unfolding and even have her cronies telling her, and she is just like, Cetrion, you can handle this. She gets bodied, and then Geras gets bodied. All the while, she could show up and freeze time whenever she wants. Once the crown is captured, that might make Kronika's attempts to intervene more difficult, especially given the fact that Fujin sends her packing when he puts it on, but there are some serious logic issues when you stop and think. My final negative is the handling of a few characters, not including Sindel, since I covered that separately. Shiva doesn't do much of consequence in the story, apart from defeating Katana and rescuing Sindel, who turns out was evil all along, I guess. How she dedicated her life to being Sindel's bodyguard and didn't know she was evil made no sense to me. And I just think Shiva's role in the story was forced and underwhelming. Kotal Khan is another one, who was somehow healed in the Soul Chamber despite the main story giving the sense that Kotal was cooked. He then emerges and loses another fight. His head is later removed in the story, adding insult to injury. I didn't think it could get much worse for Kotal, but he may never beat the jobber allegations. And of course there's other characters thrown in just to have fights, like Noob Saibot, Aaron Black, and Cabal, just to name a few. They are present, but only to lose without adding anything relevant to the story. Honestly, I'm not sure if this is a hot take, but I enjoyed Aftermath more than the base MK11 story. It suffers from similar issues, but the addition of Shang Tsung as a genuinely compelling villain alongside Sindel and Shao Kahn made a massive difference. As I've mentioned ad nauseum, Sindel being evil is absolute blasphemy. But damn, that whole chapter and Shang Tsung's chapter elevated this game to the next level. It was nice to not only see the villains get the upper hand in the story, but also playing as them to defeat the valiant heroes, sometimes gruesomely. This story also massively redeemed Shao Kahn for me, who looked weak in MK11 proper and literally smashed heads in Aftermath. Have I mentioned that Shang Tsung is incredible in this story?
Where did you send him?
Chaos Realm. Havoc will keep him entertained.
His snake-like tendencies were on display here, and Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa is just perfection. Seeing his plan come to fruition was something I thought I'd never see, since apart from Deadly Alliance, he hasn't been much of a threat in the series. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of issues, as I outlined. Twindell, the crown's importance, some of the characters getting shafted, and there are plenty more. I could go more in depth with the inconsistencies, but for what it's worth, I had a lot of fun with Aftermath. You really have to suspend your disbelief, and I think the timeline shenanigans create a lot of questionable scenarios, which is similar to the MK11 story. However, this was quick and it featured a more digestible storyline, as opposed to several small storylines the writers need to wrap up, amend, and push forward over the course of a game. On my tier list, I'm placing MK11 Aftermath in the A tier.
And new alliances are forged.
Mortal Kombat!
The fight is calling. Who will you bring? Who will you trust? No longer are we beholden to the past. A new era is upon us. This is our time. This is Mortal Kombat!
4 years after the release of MK11 and 3 following Aftermath, the latest installment to the 30-plus year franchise arrived. The teasers leading up to this game remained ambiguous, making fans question whether this would be a sequel to MK11 or a reboot. It turns out it would be both. On May 18th, 2023, NetherRealm Studios released the official announcement trailer for Mortal Kombat 1. Yes, we can no longer confidently call the first Mortal Kombat game Mortal Kombat 1. I now refer to it as the OG Mortal Kombat game or just the first game. You could call this game Mortal 1 Kombat as some have abbreviated it, but I guess they couldn't go with just Mortal Kombat since that's what they called MK9, and I don't hear anyone calling it MK12. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah. Remember the MK11 Aftermath ending we just discussed a few minutes ago? Well, this was the next step for the franchise, Liu Kang's new era. Except all the characters are back. In fact, there isn't a single new character here, but many of them have stories either slightly or drastically changed. For example, Hanzo Hasashi is a child in this timeline, while Bi-Han is back with the Sub-Zero mantle and Kuai Liang is Scorpion.
What?
You heard that right. Both are part of the Lin Kuei. The basic rundown is that the Keeper of Time, Liu Kang, handcrafted this. You know what? I'll let the man himself give you the rundown.
Having liberated the Hourglass and become Keeper of Time, my next task was to restart history. Not beholden to past events, I was free to craft a new era. It was with humility and restraint that I approached this blank canvas. After careful preparation, I began work, painting over the darkness. After eons passed, I sketched out the realms. After eons more, I brushed them in with life. In my new era, all beings will have the opportunity to find peace. Whether or not they do will be their responsibility. For my power only permits me to begin this endeavor. It is the duty of mortals to finish it.
The story begins in Outworld. Shang Tsung is now a fraud, selling fake cures until he's exposed by a grieving father.
You lie, Shang Tsung. Your cures are useless.
The humiliated, down on his luck former sorcerer is approached by a mysterious woman, referred to as Damashi, who offers him real power, reigniting his dark ambitions. Meanwhile, in Earthrealm, Kung Lao and Raiden, living as farmers, are forced into action when the Lin Kuei extort a tea house owner. Everyone's favorite, Madame Bo. Kung Lao and Raiden prove their worth as formidable fighters, taking down the Lin Kuei in what was a mere test orchestrated by Liu Kang. The man himself arrives and explains the Mortal Kombat tournament and how it draws near, pitting Earthrealm against Outworld. Liu Kang then invites them to the Wuxi Academy, where they will finish their training. Johnny Cage, struggling with a declining career, is in a bad state after a failed adventure movie. His wife leaves him and he's confronted by Kenshi Takahashi, a Yakuza gangster who reveals his connection to the Lost Taira clan. Liu Kang then arrives alongside the Lin Kuei to recruit these two as Earthrealm champions.
What in the actual fuck?
Good evening, Johnny Cage. I am Liu Kang, protector of Earthrealm. May we enter?
Back at the Wuxi Academy, Raiden earns the title of Earthrealm's champion after defeating his fellow warriors. We then shift to Outworld for the tournament, where we meet the various inhabitants of this realm, including Queen Sindel and Princesses Kitana and Mileena. Mileena is no longer a clone of Kitana, and the two are actually on good terms. Raiden achieves his destiny as Earthrealm's champion, defeating all challengers including Kitana and General Shao, the newest version of Shao Kahn. After receiving word from Geras about Shang Tsung's villain arc,
Shang Tsung.
Go on.
He has escaped his meaningless life and is on his way to becoming a powerful sorcerer. He has already infiltrated Sindel's court.
Kenshi, Kung Lao, and Johnny are sent to investigate him, discovering his dark experiments on Tarkatans. We then learn that Mileena is a victim of a disease called Tarkat, which gives her the iconic teeth and blind aggression. The group confronts Shang Tsung, not realizing that he is treating Mileena, and Kenshi is blinded by Mileena during this attack. Kitana later arrives, followed by Quan Chi, the latter of which lies about Liu Kang's quest to conquer Outworld. Quan Chi reveals that he and Shang Tsung are working with the same benefactor, Damashi, after the Earthrealmers are taken captive. The group escapes with the help of their jailer, Syzoth, a Zaterran shapeshifter and slave to Shang Tsung, who holds his family captive. They seek refuge in the Living Forest, where they meet Ashura, a demon seeking redemption, who warns them of Quan Chi and his plans to corrupt the realms. The unlikely group encounters Natara, Havoc, and Quan Chi before Ermac comes to life.
We are Ermac, a collection of souls bound by Quan Chi's magic. We live to obey his commands. Kill them.
Ashura then defeats Ermac, freeing the souls bound within Ermac's body. With Quan Chi defeated and all seemingly calm, the group returns to Earthrealm. Meanwhile, Shang Tsung reports to his mysterious benefactor, who we previously knew as Damashi, but we now know is Kronika, revealing his plans to build an army and steal the Lin Kuei. At the Sundo Festival, Syzoth helps the Earthrealmers and Ashura escape with a diversion, but he is spotted and wounded by Reiko. As General Shao's forces close in, Johnny, Ashura, and Kung Lao assist him in escaping through a portal to Earthrealm. They reveal the formation of a new deadly alliance with Quan Chi and Shang Tsung once again.
Do you also know of my former master, Quan Chi? He colludes with Shang Tsung.
A new deadly alliance?
Liu Kang consults with Geras, suspecting a survivor from a previous timeline is behind all of this madness.
Both sorcerers were visited by this person. It is her intervention that bent the arcs of their lives.
Who is she?
Unknown. Her identity has been obscured from the hourglass.
Meanwhile, Bi-Han has grown impatient with Liu Kang, who sends the Lin Kuei to infiltrate Shang Tsung's base of operation. They successfully fight their way in, only to be subdued. Shang Tsung preys on Bi-Han's motivation to bring more relevancy to the Lin Kuei, while creating doubt about Liu Kang's leadership.
As our ally, you will be given command of several battalions. Few in Earthrealm could then resist the Lin Kuei.
Bi-Han aligns himself and the Lin Kuei with Shang Tsung's treachery and reveals that he purposely let he and Kuai Liang's father die. Kuai Liang defects and defeats several enemies on his way out of the Tomb of the Dragon Army. One such enemy is Havoc, who he leaves permanently scarred. Kuai Liang and Bi-Han then come face to face, with the former taking the victory. Liu Kang travels to Outworld to meet Empress Sindel, claiming General Shao and Shang Tsung are traitors. Li Mei reluctantly allows Liu Kang into the Empress's presence. Believing her to be a traitor, Li Mei has to fight to prove her intentions. She is successful and even saves Sindel from Mileena during a Tarkat flare-up. Sindel agrees to hear Liu Kang's explanation, who insists that he will surrender Earthrealm if he cannot prove his claims. Sindel is horrified by the truth behind the Deadly Alliance, and learns of Liu Kang's role as the Keeper of Time in crafting this new universe.
When I wielded its power, it was upon me to craft all of existence, which I did when I restarted history.
Restarted?
Prior timelines, Kronika gave Shang Tsung and Quan Chi mastery of the most vile magics. Shao was not a general, a tyrannical ruler bent on conquest. You, Sindel, were his ruthless wife, who would do anything to preserve your privilege. When I took the hourglass from Kronika, I vowed to do better. So in this timeline, the sorcerers would not gain their dark powers. Shao would be your loyal follower, and you would rule Outworld firmly, but fairly.
Despite his power, Liu Kang reveals he gave up divinity to guide, not rule. General Shao's forces arrive during the explanation, with the general himself wielding Shinnok's amulet. After Sindel overcomes Nitara, Reiko, Rain, and finally General Shao, Shao's forces are defeated, and Liu Kang retrieves the amulet, freeing the prisoners. Liu Kang appeals to Sindel for her help in saving Earthrealm. Mileena leads the forces of Outworld and Earthrealm toward the Deadly Alliance's fortress to defeat Shang Tsung and Quan Chi. During the battle, Ermac overpowers Mileena's lover Tanya. Mileena is quick to defeat him and save Tanya. However, in a significant plot twist, the late King Jared of Outworld takes control of Ermac's body. He enjoys an emotional reunion with his family before joining Outworld and Earthrealm's alliance. Under the guise of defection, Mileena pretends to join the Deadly Alliance, allowing the others to infiltrate. They encounter the new era Shang Tsung, who reveals the benefactor Kronika. But it's not Kronika. It's actually Titan Shang Tsung from one of the two MK11 Aftermath endings.
Who is she, sorcerer?
Speak of the devil. Liu Kang. Meet Damashi.
Damashi? You are the victim of deception, sorcerer.
You're not Damashi. You're me. More correctly, you are me. A poor facsimile, anyway. Made lesser by Liu Kang's meddling.
It turns out the Battle of the Hourglass created two parallel timelines, Liu Kang's new era and Titan Shang Tsung's new era.
I took this form and infiltrated your timeline. I elevated these wretches, giving them great power. Together, they sowed discord among the realms and assembled for me the Dragon Army.
The Titan version then reveals his plans to merge the realities and destroy all life. The New Era Deadly Alliance turns against him, but the timeline invasion has begun. Titan Shang Tsung unleashes dark versions of the combatants, and Mileena defeats Dark Raiden first and foremost. A dark version of Sindel emerges, wiping out the heroes. This prompts Empress Sindel to step in, but Dark Sindel gets the upper hand and fatally impales her.
Oh, it's so sad to see a child lose her mother.
With her last breaths, Sindel declares Mileena as the new Empress of Outworld. Ermac then absorbs Sindel's soul, reuniting her with Jared. Liu Kang orders a retreat as the Dragon Army awakens and prepares to invade the realms. Geras reveals that despite maintaining the idea that he destroyed Fire God Liu Kang's Titan power, he instead preserved it and withheld that information to protect Liu Kang's happiness just in case they needed it. Meanwhile, Titan Shang Tsung orders Geras to locate Liu Kang. The forces of Earthrealm and Outworld split to counter the Dragon Army's attack. During their attempt to destroy the gateway, Shang Tsung, Quan Chi, and Raiden team up in a fun callback to MK Deception. The Deadly Alliance takes down several dark enemies, capping it off with the elimination of Dark Shao and Reiko. They are able to successfully destroy the portal, trapping the Dragon Army in Earthrealm. Now in control of his Titan power, Liu Kang searches for other timelines and meets Titaness Kitana, the same Kitana from the previous timeline.
Geras? Liu Kang?
Easy, Kitana. You are among friends. Each new timeline represents a different possible outcome of that battle. In mine, I became Time's Keeper. In yours, it was you.
If many timelines sprung from one, and we were both part of it, then you are my Liu Kang.
The same one who battled you in Shang Tsung's courtyard, who fought at your side at the Colosseum, who beamed with pride when you became Outworld's Khan.
They embrace and band together with Titan Kung Lao and Titan Raiden to confront Titan Shang Tsung. The four Titans manage to push back Titan Shang Tsung and his forces, but prepare for a final showdown.
Shang Tsung is gone, but he's not defeated. He will be back to renew his campaign.
Not only against this timeline, but against all timelines.
Our choice is clear. We must take the fight to him. Destroy any power he has to make war against us.
Agreed. Shang Tsung is likely already gathering allies as I gathered you. We must best his efforts.
They venture to Titan Shang Tsung's timeline to face him in a second Battle of Armageddon, a clash that would determine the fate of the multiverse. The story then becomes a choose-your-own adventure. The player can choose any available character to battle through 9 opponents up the pyramid. After reaching the top, Liu Kang is subdued by the Deadly Alliance after putting up a valiant fight. This leaves the fate of the universe in your chosen character's hands. This character ultimately triumphs over the Titan Deadly Alliance, allowing Liu Kang to regain strength. The pair then eradicate the Dark Titans, preventing them from the destruction of the timelines. As the multiverse begins to collapse with Titan Shang Tsung gone, Liu Kang sends his ally back to their timeline, preserving the fabric of reality. Liu Kang then enjoys peace back at the tea house with Johnny Cage, Kenshi, and Raiden. In a mid-credits stinger, Titan Havoc arrives in Titan Shang's timeline, reflecting on the Chaos with a K. This sets him up as the next main antagonist in this storyline.
The next time, it won't.
Alright, now let's get to the positives and negatives. Positive number 1. The tournament is finally back. Following MK9, it became clear that Mortal Kombat, you know, the tournament this entire franchise is based upon, wasn't going to be the focus. We got 2 tournaments in one game, and that was that. MK1 finally reintroduced this concept and gave us Raiden's underdog journey. In that sense, the arc we follow in the first 3 chapters was a refreshing re-entry into the series. I thoroughly enjoyed Raiden being the chosen one and watching him battle through to the end, capping it off with a victory over General Shao. There is a negative with the impact and importance, but it was fun for what it was. Positive number 2, a perfect balance of humor and seriousness.
Get away from her, you bitch. Excuse me?
You know, the movie. Tiny girl, ginormous alien.
Ripley!
No? Seriously?
This is all highlighted by Johnny Cage, who, thanks to the writing and Andrew Bowen's voice acting, did an incredible job. There are some genuine references and laugh-out-loud moments. Johnny Cage was consistently hilarious throughout, but there are plenty of other dynamics and emotional beats. The disagreements between Sub-Zero and Scorpion, Sindel's struggles as the Empress of Outworld, Melina's Tarkot affliction, Syzoth's entire tragic story. You get the point. Despite the insane premise, this game is serious when it needs to be, but it also doesn't take itself too seriously. As a result, I found it easy to immerse myself in the new era. Positive number 3, absolute cinema. Again, if I had to name 3 things this series always gets right, it's the cinematography, the lighting, and the set pieces. The world feels massive, and these characters command the screen. From the Tarkatan colony to the flesh pits to the Tomb of the Dragon Army, genuinely some of the best settings of the entire series. No matter how often we jump from location to location, it feels natural, and I'm never left wondering how or why. It allows you to escape into this world for a few hours, and I suppose this could just be me, but I was completely engrossed. Positive number 4, Kitana and Liu Kang reunite and embrace. This is a minor one, but I couldn't leave it out. Seeing these two finally together felt like another full circle moment. While I will say there wasn't much of a romance between these two in the previous timeline that we saw, the stars have always aligned for Kitana and Liu Kang. Their chemistry is somewhat questionable to me, since both of them die in MK9 with minimal interactions, then they spend all of MKX as revenants, and they finally return back from the past in MK11. Longtime fans know that these two have always been the quintessential ship of the entire series, not including Bihan and Serena. So I thought this was a nice moment. Positive number 5, the character work. I touched on this a bit in positive 2, but I have to give my praises to the writers for the character work in MK1. It's not perfect across the board by any means, especially with the villains, but Syzoth and Baraka finally don't feel like jobbers. In fact, I feel this is the best version of both characters we've ever seen. Having just 23 characters on the base roster, with Quan Chi and Ermac joining later, allowed for more development. This was especially prominent in the first half of the story. I thought most of the characters had a solid showing. Kitana and Mileena being sisters, Sindel is good again, Liu Kang giving up his Keeper of Time role to Geras, which justifies his purpose in this story, are just a few I liked. I also thought the way MK1 handled the origins of Kenchi's blindness, Mileena's Tarkatan teeth, Kuai Liang's scar, Quan Chi's white skin, and even Jared as Ermac, a callback to MK9, showed incredible attention to detail. Positive number 6, simplicity, for the most part. Ignoring everything after that reveal, you know the one I'm talking about. Mortal Kombat 1 earned its title as a true reboot. It was enjoyable to live in this world where everything is more refined and grounded. This setup allowed us to learn the new-ish versions of these characters, like Johnny's status as a funny yet failing actor, Kenchi as a former Yakuza member who went AWOL, the dynamic between Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Smoke, the tragedy of Syzoth's storyline, and so on. Apart from the lingering timeline implications, you don't have to think too hard to figure out what's going on or tie it back to something that happened 3 games ago. It functions well as a reboot in that sense. I personally found it easy and actually fun to watch the majority of this story play out while playing along. Positive number 6, the infiltration of Damashi.
Excuse me?
I know, but let me explain. From my perspective, the return of Damashi worked in the scope of this story. This mysterious entity that may or may not be Kronika, but also could be someone else entirely, is perhaps the best part of the multiverse timeline aspect in this game. We have Liu Kang, who crafted each character's backstory and presence in this timeline. So the conflict revolves around this being that corrupts the minds of those who are, at their core, evil. General Shao, Quan Chi, and Shang Tsung being the 3 main examples. I have my issues with how it played out in the long run, but the concept of Damashi affecting this timeline was intriguing, but it could have ended much better. Positive number 7, Armageddon. The final chapter of MK1 has become a point of contention amongst the fandom, but for me, I loved it. It was a fun callback to the Battle of Armageddon, which was one of the most iconic moments in the entire series. However, rather than watching it and not feeling as though we got the full picture, this puts you in the driver's seat with your choice of character. That entire concept was fun. I really enjoyed running up the steps and encountering the different hybrid characters from other universes, especially John Connor, Cyber Smoke, and Ninja Mime. There's also the decimation of the Combat Kids. I have separate issues with the final fight, but otherwise, Armageddon was an incredible addition to the story. Now to the negatives. Negative number 1, timelines. The most common complaint lies within chapters 13 and on, aka timeline shenanigans. Despite MK1 supposedly rebooting the franchise, once the benefactor is revealed, this interesting newly crafted universe suddenly feels like it doesn't mean as much. The impressive character development went slightly downhill after we find out Titan Shang Tsung is going to be the primary MK1 antagonist. Then we bring in Titans from different timelines, which just cheapens the whole concept of Titans. These are supposed to rank higher than Elder Gods, and they were just thrown in our faces from all different directions. There's also the dark characters, which just exist to have evil versions of every character, or even more evil versions of already evil characters, Dark Sindel, Dark Shao, Dark Geras, like why? As I said in my MK11 analysis, I enjoyed the timeline aspects of that game, primarily because I knew what to expect going in. MK1 just forced it and it didn't really feel necessary, especially with how well the game was going up until that point. Negative number 2. The final battle. Stemming from what I mentioned about the Armageddon concept and Damashi, the final battle against Titan Shang Tsung was so underwhelming. It didn't even feel like a true Mortal Kombat boss battle. Again, as I said in previous games, say what you will about Shinnok and Kronika, but the final battles in MKX and MK11 are genuinely difficult. Defeating Shang Tsung in this game was not only easy, but we just did that in MK11 Aftermath, and that was a much better fight. Although I found traversing the pyramid and encountering these characters enjoyable, the final fight took the steam out of an otherwise solid game. Negative number 3. Wasted cameos. This complaint is smaller in the grand scheme, but the cameos getting such minimal screen time was unfortunate. Some characters, like Tremor, Farah, the male cyborgs, Shujinko, Mavado, and Stryker, are completely missing in action. The Tremor bit angered me the most because he is one of my favorite characters who has just not been explored enough. Darius, Serena, and Chameleon are just kind of there, although Chameleon had a more prominent role in the MK1 expansion, so I'll give them that. To drive this point home, I suppose these are technically, by definition, cameos in the story, but a little more importance or at least some dialogue would have gone a long way. Negative number 4. The villains are underwhelming. Where MK11 Aftermath flourished with its portrayal of the villains, MK1 reverts back to the same issues that were present in MKX and MK11. We only get to play as the heroes, apart from Shang Tsung, and even then, he's fighting for the new era. General Shao, Reiko, Havoc, Nitara, Quan Chi, Ermac, and Shang Tsung all job to the good guys. Apart from the invasion of these dark versions, the new era villains are not shown particularly threatening, which lessens the overall presence of danger and actual stakes. Let's not forget that the whole Dragon Army subplot went nowhere. Ultimately, the final fight was the cherry on top of the subpar villain sundae. Part of me feels like the series should lean into the
choose your destiny
format, where you could play as the good guys or the villains with two separate storylines. But as it pertains to this game, I thought the villains were just there. Negative number 5. The use of Damashi. While I liked the reintroduction of Damashi as an ode to Onaga in Deception, I think this storyline would have been better suited for a long play. By that, I mean why not leave Damashi's identity ambiguous throughout the entire game? This could have been a background plot sort of out of focus while an actual grounded storyline played out. Have some scenes here and there where the villains are consulting with this entity, but leave it open-ended at the conclusion. The part about Damashi influencing the villains is a great idea, and I think it would have been cool if the final boss was the deadly Tri-Lions, if you will, of Shang Tsung, Quan Chi, and General Shao. Not only could this have been more challenging, but it would be the culmination of Damashi forming a team of villains to take over this new era. Then, the stinger would be the reveal of Damashi, whether it's Titan Shang Tsung, Onaga, or something else entirely. Just some food for thought. But overall, the reveal of Damashi's actual identity as fake Kronika but really Shang Tsung fell flat. Negative number 6. Leave it grounded with more emphasis on the tournament. I've mentioned this a few times, but the first 2 acts of this game are incredible, and I wanted more of it. Unfortunately, while the Mortal Kombat tournament finally returned, it didn't really matter. Raiden won, he received mild praise, and Sindel just walked away. That was it. The tournament isn't mentioned again after this. It all felt so rushed with no genuine payoff. The parts I liked about this game was that everything seemed smaller in scale, a nice contrast from the craziness of MK11 and Aftermath. Unfortunately, it fell into the same timeline trap, calling into question why this is even considered a reboot or titled MK1. Alright. That was a lot of words, but I have to say that I unapologetically love this story. Like I've said in many of the previous games, it has its problems, but living in this new era for 6 hours was a great experience. The characters, environments, origin stories, and a fresh start were all executed well. Am I tired of the multiverse aspect? I'm definitely getting there. But even then, I don't think it was all bad. If 75% of something is good and 25% is not so good, that's a win in my book. This game provided some solid building blocks for the future. And based on the character endings, which are canon by the way, the future looks promising. I may be getting ahead of myself, but enough time has passed that I can confidently say MK1 is one of the better stories we've had since MK9. A game that isn't perfect either. Although it's rushed at times, the final fight was a dud, and it glossed over the tournament, I found Mortal Kombat 1 to be an incredible time. Now, this was a tough one because while it's good, MK1 is not without its issues. In fact, many of the issues I outlined in B-tier MK11 are present in MK1. All that said, I enjoyed the experience of MK1 more than MK11 because it felt a little more grounded, at least for the most part. I also would take a mid-Titan Shang Tsung over Kronika any day of the week. This may be somewhat controversial based on the opinions I've seen, but for me, I am comfortably sliding MK1 into the A tier.
May we enter?
But there is room in S tier in all honesty. I just don't think it's quite there yet.
There are no sacred laws, no divine rules. I choose what is right. I hold the power. And I choose to bless all beings everywhere with anarchy.
This new Havoc is different from ours. He doesn't want freedom. He wants to burn everything down.
The future is chaos. All must embrace it.
You sound like Bihan.
I am he, though not as you remember.
What did Havoc do to you?
He perfected me.
One year after the release of Mortal Kombat 1, the questions regarding Titan Havoc's presence in the main story's teaser would play out in the game's first expansion, called Mortal Kombat 1 Chaos Reigns. 3 characters joined the roster via this storyline, including Noob Saibot alongside a now female Sector and Cyrax. But how would these 3 characters factor into the overarching Titan Havoc storyline? Let's find out. Chaos Reigns opens with a cinematic training sequence where we see the new era Cyrax and Sector battle with some incredible fight choreography. Bihan then shows up and we learn that Kuai Liang has officially separated from the Lin Kuei and created the rival Shirai Ryu clan. With Kuai Liang due to marry his soon-to-be wife Harumi, Bihan plans to attack this wedding.
Here for his wedding.
Attack his wedding? I am aware what he's done, but...
Surprise will give us the tactical advantage.
We may win the battle, but find we lose the war. No one will respect us.
Sub-Zero leads the ambush, with Sector and Cyrax by his side. During this assault, it's revealed that Bihan deceived Cyrax.
So impatient to lead, to make the Lin Kuei his. My brother went even further. He broke his sacred oath and sided with outsiders against Earthrealm.
No, that is impossible.
Did I have this when last we saw each other? Who do you think is responsible?
Grandmaster, is this true?
Every word.
However, after discovering the truth, Cyrax turns against Bihan, helping the Shirai Ryu defend themselves and capture both him and Sector. Despite her role in the deception, Kuai Liang shows mercy thanks to Harumi, but refuses to forgive Cyrax. With Sub-Zero and Sector captured, Liu Kang brings them before Mileena to be judged. During the negotiation, Titan Havoc launches an assault with various Chaos versions of known characters, seeking to merge multiple timelines with his own and reshape the multiverse.
That is why you are here. To pit my timeline against yours in combat.
Yours, mine, all timelines. You cannot imagine the chaos.
After capturing Geras, Bihan attempts to stop them but ends up captured himself. Titan Havoc then reveals his plans to combine Geras' time crystals with 6 Kamidogu artifacts to destroy the multiverse.
To pass the time while I infuse my Kamidogu with Geras' time crystals.
What are Kamidogu?
You don't know. see for yourself. They are powerful, ancient relics. When used together, they can remake this timeline's reality. My genius was discerning that they could also shape the reality of other timelines. Once my Kamidogu are infused with them, I will have the power to remake all timelines as I see fit.
Condemning us all to anarchy.
Not condemned. Elevated. Perfected.
Yeah, remember the Kamidogu we mentioned in Deception? That concept is back. Liu Kang sends Scorpion, Cyrax, and Sector to Chaos Realm to rescue Geras and, to a lesser extent, Bi-Han. In Chaos Realm, they form an alliance with members of a rebellion against Titan Havoc, including Lieutenant Colonel Johnny Cage from a World War II-like timeline, and the overthrown rulers Emperor Rain and Empress Tanya. While sneaking into the Chaosium, Havoc traps the group in a deadly maze, where Rain tragically sacrifices himself to save Sector and Tanya. After overcoming several deadly traps and Chaos Warriors, Tanya negotiates with a powerful dragon located in the maze named Orin, shout out Armageddon, to secure their escape. They eventually infiltrate Havoc's Citadel, where they find Bi-Han, transformed into Noob Saibot, a dark, chaotic product of Havoc's experimentation.
You sound like Bi-Han.
I am he, though not as you remember.
What did Havoc do to you?
He perfected me, baptizing me in chaos.
A fight between brother and brother ensues, where Noob Saibot defeats Scorpion.
Greetings, brother. Once again we are opposed.
Your new attire suits you. It is as black as your heart.
How are you always so blind? First to the Lin Kuei's potential, now to the perfection of Lord Havoc's chaos.
It is your ambition that is blind, Bi-Han. As always. Though he twisted your mind to his purpose, he left your desires unchanged.
But Tanya then conquers Noob and renders him unconscious. The heroes then locate and rescue Geras and escape with the Kamidogu. Later on, despite his efforts, Liu Kang is unable to reverse Bi-Han's transformation into Noob Saibot, but he is able to break Havoc's hold over him. Havoc then arrives while Noob Saibot gathers himself and manages to steal back the Kamidogu. Noob Saibot runs through Havoc's forces before heading to the Ying Valley, where he plans to annihilate the timelines. As he utilizes the Kamidogu in an attempt to inflict chaos and destroy the multiverse, the good guys arrive in a genuine Avengers Endgame type moment.
So Dad, look.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Team Chaos fights Team Non-Chaos in yet another epic battle. After showcasing an impressive ability to create copies of himself, Noob Saibot steps up to Titan Havoc.
Not this time, Havoc. This time, you battle me.
No, Bi-Han. Your ego is too...
Havoc filled my mind with his chaos. I have learned his thoughts, learned his combat.
Ah, fool. You have learned nothing. Chaos is unknowable, unpredictable. You are in no way prepared to stop the pain you will endure.
The two then fight, with Bi-Han ultimately taking the victory. Noob attempts to exterminate Havik for good, but Liu Kang steps in under the pretext that Havik's death could affect millions across timelines. Bi-Han attempts to take down Liu Kang in a moment of rage, only for Geras to freeze him in time. After the battle, Liu Kang allows Sector to leave and become the new Grand Master of the Lin Kuei, while promising to find a way to restore Noob Saibot's humanity. Noob remains at the Temple of the Elements for safekeeping. Meanwhile, Scorpion forgives Cyrax for her past actions, inviting her to join the Shirai Ryu as the story comes to a close. Alright, now let's get to the positives and negatives of MK1 Chaos Reigns.
Chaos. Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos. Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos. Chaos. Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos.
Positive number 1. Noob Saibot. Bi-Han as Noob Saibot has been an absolute jobber seemingly since the dawn of time. Even in this game, he enters with this incredible cinematic only to lose to Tanya. Not great, but I do think the entirety of Noob in the expansion was decent. He has some seriously sick moves, absolute blind and petty rage as we've come to expect out of Bi-Han, and there are even a few instances of Bi-Han having a soul, mostly with Sector. Despite the start not including his triumph over Kuai Liang, this noob was not as much of a jobber, and his entire chapter up to the final battle was the most fun I had with Chaos Reigns. I wouldn't say he's incredibly well developed or anything, but Bi-Han as noob was ironically one of the brighter spots. Positive number 2. Titan Havik's timeline. Titan Havik's timeline, which I'll just call Chaos Realm, is another aspect I liked quite a bit. The world and stages NRS built here are truly incredible. I specifically enjoyed the Chaosium with the maze and the death traps. There were some cool sequences while the characters were trapped in this labyrinth, and obviously one emotional moment. I thought Havik being able to watch the events unfold was an interesting touch. The Chaos Realm displayed here definitely gives off chaotic vibes, and I just thought this part of the expansion looked great. Positive number 3. Absolute cinema. Again. Stemming from positive 2, the world building in Chaos Reigns is borderline awe-inspiring. I've said enough about the Chaos Realm aspect, but Kuai Liang's wedding, the voice acting...
They are allies, not friends, and only for the length of this crisis. When it is over, we will settle our differences in combat.
The fire, the facial expressions, these things almost never miss. NRS also does a great job making it feel as though you're playing a movie as opposed to a fighting game. The cinematics and fight choreography are just simply incredible, especially when Noob Saibot and Scorpion throw down. The framing of these scenes is just so well done that if there's one thing Chaos Reigns gets right, it's, as I said, the absolute cinema aspect. Positive number 4. Improved final fight. Although I have my issues with Titan Havik, the final fight was arguably my favorite part of the entire expansion. It was much more challenging than the previous 2 Titan Shang Tsung fights, which made all the difference in the world. It's certainly not as cinematic as Kronika's fight, and was perhaps a touch easier than Shinnok, but this felt like a genuine Mortal Kombat boss fight, and that's really the only way to wrap up an MK story. Positive number 5. Emperor Rain and Empress Tanya. The inclusion of Emperor Rain and Empress Tanya completely redeemed their presence in the main story. Both characters felt like somewhat of an afterthought there, which I think was just a product of the writers having too many characters to fully flesh out. That's where Chaos Reigns came in to give those somewhat forgotten characters more depth. It was interesting to see Havik's influence and timeline invasion from a different perspective. It added some genuine emotion to the story, especially since the two are native Edenians. Unfortunately, we don't get to spend too much time with them since Rain dies and all, but it was enjoyable while it lasted. Positive number 6, Sector and the armor. Gender swaps aside, I enjoyed Sector's characterization in Chaos Reigns. Plain and simple, she sees Bi-Han as a companion and a ruthless leader that she respects. I feel that plays into her decision to look past Bi-Han's actions, blinded by love, if you will. I mean, in one moment, they collectively agree that there is no honor with how Kuai Liang exited the Lin Kuei. Then, in another moment, they orchestrate their attack on the Shirai Ryu during Scorpion's wedding. That's some serious hypocrisy. Sector was willing to go to the ends of the realms to defend Bi-Han and justify his actions. But at the same time, she genuinely cared for him, and it showed in her characterization. Overall, I feel Sector was a more compelling character than Cyrax. And the fact that she is this master armorer who created this prototype Cyber Lin Kuei suit gives us something to look forward to in a future continuation. Now, let's dive into the negatives. Negative number 1. Short and rushed. My biggest issue is the length of Chaos Reigns. I know it's to be expected with an expansion, but this doesn't feel like the kind of story you can tell in under 2 hours of cutscenes. It felt short and didn't provide enough time to expand on these interesting characters. My prime example is that we essentially have no clue what actually happened to Bi-Han, including Havoc's experimentation and what led him to having the Shadow Companion and this ability to create and manipulate portals. Origin stories are some of my favorite aspects about this series, and the lack of information regarding Noob Saibot was disappointing. I wanted more time to learn about Emperor Rain and Empress Tanya, more about Kuai Liang's new era Shirai Ryu, what Smoke has been up to, and more development for Cyrax. At some parts, it felt like we were just speedrunning through the story. I mean, it opens with Sector and Cyrax's training sequence, which was incredible. Then there's exposition between the 3 Lin Kuei members, and boom, we are at Kuai Liang's wedding. What I feel Aftermath excelled in, Chaos Reigns came up short. Literally. Negative number 2. Abrupt ending with no cliffhanger. I'm not sure where the intrigue lies going into the next game with the Chaos Reigns ending. Bi-Han defeats Titan Havoc, who has his limbs removed and is placed in a prison of some sort, perhaps the Void. Will we ever see him again? What are we supposed to expect from Noob Saibot going forward? I guess the key takeaway is that Liu Kang intends to restore him, but there's not much from an intrigue perspective moving forward. This story honestly felt like a blip, and I'm not convinced this will matter in the future of Liu Kang's new era, but we shall see. Negative number 3. Another subpar antagonist. I thought Titan Havoc was interesting for a bit, but he's just so one-dimensional. I get that Chaos is Havoc's thing, he only said it about 350 times, but it left a lot to be desired. He also essentially follows the same arc as Titan Shang Tsung, which again, is underwhelming and repetitive, to say the least. Back-to-back-to-back stories of the primary antagonist wanting to take over timelines is just exhausting. Also, the random inclusion of the Kami Dogu, which isn't expanded upon whatsoever, didn't make the situation any better. As I said before, I think Havoc's underdevelopment is a product of the story's runtime. But in the same breath, I'm not sure what more he would have to offer even with more time. He definitely does have a great look and definitely feels like a solid MK villain right down to the final battle, but I think he was just underutilized. Negative number 4. Why the Kami Dogu? Speaking of the Kami Dogu, why were they featured in this story at all? How did Titan Havoc get them? Where did they come from? Why did he lose them only to get them back just a few moments later? These are the questions that have no real answers. The whole idea was that Titan Havoc would be more powerful with them attached, but then he ends up losing to Noob anyway. This is an issue to me because of how well the Deception story explained the importance of the Kami Dogu, and to a lesser extent, the MKX comics. This interesting concept kind of felt forced into the storyline and had zero payoff. I hope this isn't the last we'll see of the Kami Dogu and that it will link to something bigger in the future. Negative number 5. Noob Saibot loses to Tanya? Let me get this straight. Noob Saibot has this incredible cinematic entrance where he defeats Kuai Liang with between 45 minutes and 1 hour left in the expansion, and he loses to Tanya? This outcome took the steam out of Noob for me, at least for a little bit. I'm not sure why we couldn't just play as him right then and there instead of giving Tanya one extra fight. Someone that has no history with Bi-Han. It was right there. Noob and Scorpion had an incredible fight in what was probably the best sequence in Chaos Reigns, only for Tanya to roll up and defeat him. This was just such a weird manner of introducing him into the story. I would have preferred Noob's chapter to begin upon his reveal, and then we fight Scorpion before the good guys band together to subdue him temporarily. Negative number 6. Tanya's chapter was too long. This might be a nitpick, but since we're on the topic of Tanya, I felt her chapter was just a bit too long for my liking. It probably should have ended 1 or 2 fights earlier, especially considering Cyrax only got 4 fights, a brand new character in the game. This may have come down to a structuring issue since we only got to play as the 3 DLC characters, Emperor Rain and Empress Tanya. After Noob's introduction, I remember thinking, wow, we are still playing as Tanya? I don't know. That part felt a little dragged out. Negative number 7, recycled opponents. From Sector's chapter on, the only enemies are these Chaos versions of characters on the MK1 roster. This is fine, but my biggest issue is this. You fight and defeat Chaos Quan Chi with a Chaos Shang Tsung cameo, only to then fight a Chaos Shang Tsung with a Quan Chi cameo. This happened quite a few times, and then 4 times consecutively in Emperor Rain's chapter and Empress Tanya's chapter. I know many fights in Mortal Kombat stories are throwaways, but this felt extreme. I will just say after all of that analysis that I don't absolutely despise Chaos Reigns like so many others have. However, as outlined in the positives and negatives, it has a litany of issues. Chief among them is how short and uninspired it felt. I think back to the complexity of Deception and MK9 and how easy it was to get lost into these immersive universes, but that's probably an unfair comparison. A fairer comparison is obviously MK11 Aftermath, which I think was worlds better than this. There are some definite positives. I think Noob was pretty good overall. The cinematography, the atmosphere, the environments, the Titan Havoc fight was good, but the story is subpar at best and bland at its worst. Part of me just wants to accept that, hey, this is an expansion and not meant to be a full game. I think that's the most level-headed approach, especially since we've only ever had 2 expansion stories in the history of Mortal Kombat. This is getting a little off topic, but I guess just to bring it home, it's fun for what it is, but the story is disjointed and kind of just feels all over the place. Chaos Reigns did hold my attention for what it's worth. It's a fun time if you turn your brain off, but trying to make sense of what happens is where it gets challenging. I was between C and D tier on this one, and I know I mentioned quite a few issues, but it's not nearly as bad as Special Forces. That game genuinely belongs in a tier on its own. So I'll put Chaos Reigns in the C tier.
Chaos.
Well, that's it. Every single NRS Mortal Kombat story ranked. Let's recap those rankings before looking at the final MK story tier list and picking one singular GOAT story. For the NRS era, we have Mortal Kombat 9 in the S tier, Mortal 1 Kombat and Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath in the A tier, Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat X in the B tier, and finally, Mortal 1 Kombat Chaos Reigns in the C tier. Now to the final tier list, which encompasses all 3 Mortal Kombat story-based tier lists I've done thus far. Don't forget to check out these 2 previous videos if you haven't already. The S tier contains Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, Mortal Kombat Deception, and Mortal Kombat 9. The A tier includes Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath, and Mortal 1 Kombat. The B tier includes Mortal Kombat 1992, otherwise known as the first game, Mortal Kombat Armageddon, Mortal Kombat X, and Mortal Kombat 11. The C tier contains Mortal Kombat 4, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, and Mortal 1 Kombat Chaos Reigns. And alone in the D tier, as it always should be, Mortal Kombat Special Forces. And now, it's time to declare the GOAT Mortal Kombat story. After months of deliberation, I ultimately narrowed it down to Mortal Kombat 9 and Deception. To put it simply, I believe these are the 2 best stories in the history of the franchise, each for entirely different reasons. Ultimately, I'm picking Deception because I believe it's the most complete story with the least amount of glaring issues. Although I do love MK9 and enjoy it more as a game overall, it has far too many retcons and inconsistencies that hold it back slightly, not to mention the whole Sindel thing. Deception might honestly be the cop-out answer, and it's definitely not without its issues. But the world building, character development, and the lore provided in this game put the Mortal Kombat story at its peak. Add in one of the best bosses ever in Onaga, a character worth rooting for in Shujinko, meaningful bios and story development, and the presence of damn near every Mortal Kombat character in some way, shape, or form, and I think that's enough reason for elevating Deception to GOAT status.
I am the GOAT!
The goat. The goat.
When all is said and done, I was pleasantly surprised at how solid many of these games are from a story perspective. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. Will they ever be? Probably not. Has the writing changed drastically over the years? Yeah, you could say that. But honestly, for a fighting game, I'm always impressed with how Midway and NetherRealm expanded the lore and stayed true to many of the series' most iconic characters and storylines. Even the minor details that most might not pick up on. Say what you will about Mortal Kombat over the years, but it's easy to see the love shown to this franchise by the developers. I feel as though so few fighting games flesh out their characters to this level. It's not perfect, but even at its worst, I'm usually entertained, except for Special Forces, because let's be real. Anyway, if you're still listening this deep in, I want to say I appreciate each and every one of you for the support on the channel and the videos. It means the realms to me, and I hope you were at least somewhat entertained for the last few hours. If you made it this far, comment Quan Chi perfected me, just for the hell of it.
Quan Chi has perfected me.
But now is your time to tell me how great or horrendous my rankings and opinions are. Head to the comments and let me know what I got right and what I got wrong. I'll be sure to channel my inner Sub-Zero to deflect the heat. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and comment if you enjoyed, and I'll be back with another video soon.